So I'll just kind of just go down the line from the list of questions I had. So I'll just
Yeah.
start from the first question that I have for you on the list here is how did your early life experiences shape your aspirations and career choices?
I think, I mean, in terms of film, I never thought I was going to be a part of the film industry. I thought I was going to be in the medical professional world. I just always wanted to do good and be good and have that sort of impact into the world. So it wasn't it wasn't so much that I was like, oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker. I'm going to work in the film industry. It was just kind of by happenstance, to be honest with you.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I know with other people too, it's either some people they were always in it, they always wanted to go for it, but I hear so many stories like it's just happenstance where
Right.
they're going for something else or someone works in graphic design, they just end up in film. Or in your case, working in the medical field, then you kind of happen into film in that regard. So I did some light research. I know you've done a bunch of different stuff, but that
Yeah.
might be an understatement by even saying that too. But but as far as the rigging grip work specifically, which is why I reached out, how would you describe the work that you do and how is it different from what other people might imagine that it is?
Well, I think more often than not, people don't know what grips are. And so the first hurdle that you have to climb is like, well, what is a grip? What is that? And to dumb it down in a way that I don't, not to dumb it down, but for people that don't work on set or, you know, have any idea how the movie magic process happens, basically what I say to them is anything that has to do with rigging cameras, if we have to secure them or we shape and diffuse light. And people are like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, well, imagine the sun's blasting full at you and your face looks completely white because the sun's overexposing you. Well, we help even you out and make you look like, we make the actors look pretty, right? And so I would basically say, yeah, we anything that has to do with securing cameras and anything that has to do with the shaping and securing of lights. Sometimes we work with visual effects, so sometimes we're putting up green screen, blue screen on frames, and so anytime you look at a behind the scenes photo, 99% of the time you're going to see grip gear hanging out. You're going to see the big blue screens, green screens, the bounces, the negatives. That's all grip stuff. And I guess as far what was the second half of that question?
So how would it be different from what people might imagine that being a grip is?
I think, you know, like going back to a lot of people don't know what goes into filmmaking, and the thing that I always tell people is that it's very paramilitary. So there's all sorts of jobs that you can do in the film business. You can be a cook, you can be a medic, you could be um, a florist, you could be a props master, you can be hair and makeup, normally things like that. As far as grip work's concerned, how does it differ from what people imagine that to be? I don't know. I guess if you're familiar with set life, you always imagine big, beefy dudes flinging around things that are over 100 pounds. You don't picture me, right? I'm 5'2", maybe 110 pounds wet, right? Um, but it's all about being smart and being safe and how can I achieve this shot and this look that the DP and the director wants in the most efficient fashion in a not cheap fashion, but how do I make it efficient? How to make it not crazy expensive? How do I do this safely? Um, there's a lot of things that go into it. You're chatting with the director of photography to figure out, well, what's the look of this shot? What are we trying to do? Then you're talking with the gaffer who's, basically saying, oh, these are where the lights are going to go. This is how we're going to make the lights look. This is what I want it to achieve on the actor. And so, yeah,
And thank you for sharing all that because from what I've heard with grip work, it's very work intensive. And those days on sets can be long, to say the least, and especially if working out in the heat as well.
sure.
So, so, so,
Yeah, it's if you're a shooting grip, it's a lot of stop and go, right? So let's say we're setting up for a scene. Well, I know that I'm going to need this equipment to do it. Maybe it'll take me about 30 minutes to do, depending on what the setup is. and then your grips are running around doing all those things. And then once it's all set up and the lights are doing what they're supposed to do, the camera's set where it's supposed to be, the blocking's been worked out, then you're just kind of hanging out until the next setup. So a lot of people see grips roaming around. Well, yes, but also like as soon as you start filming, depending on how long that scene is, if it's a page scene, you could be sitting around for 2 hours not doing anything until the next the next sequence. So
Yeah, and kind of reminds me, I remember I interviewed someone who was a camera scenic and scenic artist, and she described her work as sometimes there are times where you're just not doing anything, but then all of a sudden it's just you got to be ready to go. So it's like
yeah,
you always have to stay on your toes.
totally. You have to be on all the time. If you're on set. Now, as far as rigging's concerned, you're technically what is considered offset. So what rigging grips do, because there's two separations, right? You have your shoot crew and then you have your rig crew. And so your shoot crew is what you traditionally see in behind the scenes photos, the people that are actively working the set. What the rigging grips do is we help advance the shoot crew. So we'll be there to set up, like, let's say we have a scene in this bedroom, and I know that I need a light here and here, and I have this specific rig in this room. Well, we won't have time to do that same day,
Hmm.
right? Because it'll take, well, let's say 4 hours to set up. Well, we don't have 4 hours when you're shooting to set up for a 5-minute scene, right? So you would have the rigging crew come and we would set up the room for the shoot crew to come in and they kind of fine tune the lighting situation on the day.
Mhm.
And then once the shooting crew moves on to the next location or the next room or whatever it may be, then the rigging crew comes back in and cleans up all that mess.
Mhm.
And then we just basically leapfrog, in front and behind the shoot crew. And sometimes, depending, especially Fallout was really notorious for this. Is the rigging crew was there a lot of the days that they were shooting, just because of how big our setups would be. And so, to help the shooters advance, the rigging crew would stay and be on set to help them advance.
Mhm. And to kind of go back a bit, so when you started in the industry, what was your first job in the film industry?
So, to rewind, I went to LA
LA.
and I was pursuing to be, I wanted to be a doctor. That's what I wanted to do. And I was going to medical school and I decided that was not the path for me. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no backup plan. And because I was in a city full of creatives, I ended up meeting this actress who she's Brazilian and she can speak English and she can write in English, but she wanted somebody to look over her script and make sure that her translations were on point. She's like, "Oh, Amanda, can you help me?" Well, sure. When I have time, I'll help you. So eventually I found the time when I decided I wasn't going to continue medical school. And I helped her work on a couple of scripts, and she was like, "Dude, we should make some short films. We should make some web series." So that's really how I fell into the industry. It was producing and writing and directing, short little indie projects that never really saw the light of day. And enough of those happened that, I didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't know what a grip was. I didn't know what a gaffer was. I didn't know what a PA was. And so I learned a lot of that being in the indie world. And eventually I came back to Texas, and that's where I really got my start. And I started on a commercial as an Expedia commercial, and I was a production assistant. And just from that one job, I got the next job, and then the next job, and then the next job, and then the next job. And eventually I did art department work, I did assistant director work, grip work, electrician work, special effects, stunts, a bunch of different departments. And the one that kept me the most employed was the grip department. So eventually I made my rise in that, but it was just one little commercial.
I'm looking at
And yep. And then it was just the next one, the next one, the next one. So that's how I got my start, was originally just meeting an actress who wanted help with her stuff, and then eventually coming back and managing to get a commercial from a friend who also worked in the industry, that I went to high school with. And he was like, "Hey, do this Expedia commercial." Okay. I didn't know anything still. 'cause the commercial world is very different from the indie world, and it's like, okay, well, I never had walkies before. Like, what's the walkie etiquette, and what's this department do? Trying to figure that all out. I had never been on like a truly professional set, and
Mhm,
so it was a crazy, crazy experience. But you learn
mhm,
on the fly, it's sink or swim. So.
mhm. And for you in that type of environment, from there, jumping off from that commercial, what is your process for going about finding work in the industry? Because I know networking plays a huge role, but outside of that, how else have you had to find work in the industry?
Um, Truthfully, it's word of mouth. The word of mouth is such a huge thing. I mean, from that one commercial, it was just somebody recommended me for the next job. And then I guess they liked my work enough to say, "Oh, we like your hustle. So why don't you take Amanda to the next job?" And to the next job. I've never really had to actively hunt for work. I've just been fortunate enough that people have passed my name around, and then producers will call me and say, "Hey, do you want to do this job?" Especially when I was in like the commercial market, because commercials last maybe anywhere from a day to a week, depending on the project, and then you have to get the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. With television and feature films, it's a little bit different. Um, at that point, I had already kind of established myself in the grip department, and key grips will pass names along to their best boy grips, which is their second in command. And they'll say, "Hey, you should bring on so and so for this crew, for this project, for either full time or part time, whatever it may be." And so I managed to, on a commercial that I was PAing, a key grip saw what I was doing, and he was like, I guess he liked my hustle. And he said, "Cool. Do you want to be a grip, Amanda?" And I said, "Sure." And so he was like, "Well, I have this job coming up. It's a television show. It's my first one." And he's like, "I'll reach out to you." So for more practical advice, I mean, for myself, I've just been recommended by people, or people have just picked me up um, by proxy of being on the same set. But for other people who maybe don't have connections within the industry, like a really good resource would be like Facebook groups. Facebook groups, like filmmaking groups, will be like cast and crew called, paid, and people will post positions that they're looking for, like needing filled. So it'll be like Expedia commercial needs gaffer, grip, PAs, so and so, and you on that Facebook group could be like, "Oh, hey, like I, I'm available. I can do this," and that would be one way you could get jobs.
Mhm. And for you, with that process, was there any sort of, for being a Rick and Grip specifically, was there sort of a formal training process that you had to go through? Or what was
I
that training
think
process like?
I think a lot of the skills that you develop on set are like you learn as you're there. So there wasn't any formal training to be a rig and grip. You just get hired on, and you're green and you don't know the equipment, and somebody who's in that same department as you, whether it's your, a more experienced grip or your key grip, that's the person that's teaching you how to do the job.
Mm.
And obviously, you're not going to be trusted to do like crazy
Yeah.
rigs right out the gate. Like if you don't know what a 1 ton motor is and you don't know how to hang it, like of course I'm not going to trust you to do it, but I'm going to show you how to do it. And so it's really hands-on experience that teaches you how to be a rig and grip. And of course, like as you're doing jobs, especially for in television or in movies, that could be from 3 months to over a year and a half that you're on that job. I mean, every single day you're touching that gear. Every single day you're being trained, and every single location that you're at is different. So you're learning how to basically put the Lego blocks in specific fashions for any scenario. And so that's where you're learning how to do the job, is on set. Now, of course, can film schools teach you? I don't really know. I never went to film school. I think it could teach you the etiquette and like what certain departments do, but you're not getting the same hands-on sort of experiences that you need to do the job.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of really for what I hear a lot of friends here just in their different careers, it's I mean, school can be helpful, of course.
Yeah,
Me as a college graduate, of course, I'm gonna say school
of
is
course,
helpful,
of
but
course.
it's one of those things where nothing can really beat just any type of job work that on hands experience, honestly.
Right.
Especially with what it seems like, whether it's like corporations, like they look at the education, but like it's really that on hand experience that it seems like matters more sometimes to a certain extent, especially
Yeah,
when it's like it's between you and this other person for a job.
sure.
And so for that preparation process, what was that like for Fallout specifically for being a Viking grip? And where were you based at in terms of when you were working on that?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question? I don't think I understood.
Oh, so for Fallout, where were you working at? Like which part of the country were you all shooting at? Or
Oh,
like
gotcha, gotcha. So I got called into Fallout. It's actually a funny story. So I had finished Spy Kids here in Texas in the summer of 22. And that same day, I got a phone call from a key grip. And he said, "Hey, Amanda, I'm really looking for a best boy to do this job in Utah." And I said, "Okay, great. What's the job?" "Oh, I don't really know. It's for this amount of time and this is scale pay, et cetera, et cetera." "Okay, when do you need me to start?" "Oh, it'll be the following Monday." And I got called Friday. So I went out to Utah and I told my key rep that brought me on. I asked him if there was people that I could pull from Texas to come to Utah with me, as it's my responsibility as the best boy to find crew. And he said, "Sure, bring whoever you want." Cool. So get out to Utah, find out that it's Fallout, and I ended up doing about a month of work there. And there was two key rigging grips that I worked for. The key rigging grip who would call me to do the job initially. His name's Richard Ball, and he was the Utah local rigging key. And then the key rigging grip that was attached to the show, Christopher Granito, ended up also traveling to Utah. So we had the key grip, the key rigging grip that's attached to the show that was originated in New York. They traveled to Utah and then they grabbed local crew. And that was me and Richard Ball and the people that I brought from Texas. And there was people that we got from Utah, so it wasn't just Texans.
yeah.
So from there, Christopher Granito, the key rigging grip attached to the show, on day two, he asked me to finish the show with them in New York. And I said, okay. And so literally within that time frame that I was there in Utah doing the job, I house hunted for a place in Brooklyn because I knew the job was going to basically take me until March of 23, and it was August at that point. And so that's how I ended up. So I originally started in Utah, then it traveled me to New York, and we were kind of all over the place in New York. But it also filmed in Namibia. I was not out there for that unit. That filmed before they went to Utah. But yeah, the Utah unit, and then
Mm.
back to the great state of New York.
I think I saw something. You're from Texas, right?
That's right.
Hey, which part? Wait, which part of Texas? Because I'm
I'm from
Dallas.
San Antonio. San
Oh,
Antonio.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
the third best city in the state, third
Oh no,
best, arguably
it's
second best, maybe.
it's the best.
I love debating people the best city in Texas.
It's
As
San
long
Antonio, obviously.
as long as we can all agree Houston's at the bottom out of the big four cities. Like Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, then Houston. There we go. That's
Dallas
the
is in the bottom for me, truthfully, but that's another story for another day.
well, hopefully that can be one of the bright spots from Dallas.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
no, for sure. There's great people in Dallas. I work with a lot of good people out there.
And so to dive more into your work on Fallout as a rigging grip in Utah and New York, what were more of your day-to-day responsibilities on set?
So I'm known as the best boy grip, or the way the show labeled me was the best person grip. So basically, that means I'm second in command of the rig and grip department. And so my day to day basically looked like figuring out all the logistics for what we had to achieve. So anything that had to do with trucking or getting gear or staging equipment, um, hiring personnel. doing all the admin work, and then working hand in hand with my key grip to make sure that if we had to divide and conquer into multiple units, who we were going to put in charge, and basically being the boots on the ground to make sure that the personnel that I would hire would know what they had to do, especially if we were, between 3 to 5 units, maybe in a single day, and we all had specific things that we had to do. So I was basically the liaison for my key grip to direct the crew what they needed to do if he was unable to do so because he was tied up in something else. And then another part of my responsibilities was being the liaison between production and the rigging grips. So, a lot of times there's communication with the production department to figure out, okay, well, we need certain special equipment. So if we need like big heavy duty machines, well, I'm communicating with production about our needs to achieve the shot. And then from then, we're figuring out all the logistics to which days, for how long, how many, that's which vendor, that sort of thing.
Mm.
And so that's what my day looked like a lot of the time. So I'm behind the computer a lot, but also making sure that I'm managing my team to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and making sure ultimately that everything's safe, because that's the biggest thing about our department, because we're hanging things over people's heads that weigh thousands of pounds sometimes. And we have to make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and people know what they're doing at any given time, making sure that they're double checking the equipment and not leaving anything behind. And so safety is like the number one thing
Yeah.
in what we do.
Oh yeah. And what is definitely what I'm getting a lot is some managerial work, especially
Yes.
for me working as working a manager type position before and on the movie theater side of the business.
Right.
And for you, what type of what are your methods to try to like get people to make sure like they stay in line? Because I know it was such an interpersonal job. Everyone has their own ideas, but what are those like things you use and those communication tactics that you use to make sure everyone's on the same page and make sure everyone
I
works out the
think
most best way
I think,
possible?
it's it's a little trickier for me because a lot of the times, I don't want to say a lot of the times, I have this thought that people don't look at me and see that I'm a rigging grip. A lot of the times people confuse me as a production assistant or hair or, to a traditionally feminine role on set. Not that anybody's outright said that to me. It's just something that you witness and you experience like firsthand. And so it's just about, as far as my team, letting them know that I know what I'm doing, garnering that respect first and foremost. I'm never going to demand something from my team that I wouldn't do myself. And so establishing like very early on what the expectations of the job are. Um, like I mentioned to you before, it's very paramilitary in a lot of ways. We're very hierarchical in our roles. And since I'm second in command and I'm the liaison for my key grip to the crew, he's entrusting me to make sure that the crew does what they're supposed to be doing. And so a lot of times it's just being open communication with my team. Hey, this is what we need here. This is how we're going to do it. And if they feel like they have a better way that they can do it faster and more safely, I'm always open ears to them because perhaps they're seeing something that I'm not seeing. And I feel like that trust and that openness has created respect between my crew and myself. And they know that I'm going to protect them when it's, if anything were to happen, let's say like production doesn't want to get us a hotel for some reason if we worked like 14-hour days. Like they know that I would fight for something like that and that I'm going to be looking out for them in all the ways administratively that I can. And yeah, I just think open communication and just being direct and not letting people um, assume that you don't know what you're doing. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
mm. And what I'm gathering is that's definitely a process that does take time. And in fact, that you had all that experience too. So the fact that kind of made, I wouldn't say not made it easier, but made it more manageable. especially because when you're on a schedule, you have to be so efficient with the communication.
Sure, sure. I mean, very early, I mean, basically the way the day runs is, let's say we arrive somewhere at 6 o'clock in the morning, and here's the objective of the day. These are the things that we have to do. We gather the team and we say, we are doing this, this, this. And I'll give them the first three things that they got to do. It's like, all right, we got to build 5 frames. We got to rig this condor. Then we got to level this condor. And we'll just go through the day like that, giving them the information they need right in that moment, giving them the overview of what the day is going to look like. So they, at no point there's no confusion about what we have going on. And then being open to questions and basically figuring out how to divide and conquer the work so that way we can get out of there and do the next thing that we got to do in a safe and in an efficient manner. And definitely having all the experience that, when you're working all these different projects and commercials, indies, feature films, television, I mean, they all have something to teach you. And I've pulled knowledge from each one of those and, what serves this purpose the best. And I don't know, it's just been really useful. It's been really useful, and I've been really grateful for all the experiences that I've had, all the way from the super early indie days. You were just talking about a short film that you did. Like, there's stuff that you learned from that one short film that's going to carry with you if eventually you want to do television, or if eventually you want to do feature works. You're going to look back at that short film and you're like, oh, I learned really good nuggets from that I'm going to implement later into these projects. So it's kind of the same idea.
Mhm. And I'm curious to, well, before we further, we have to say this first. Happy birthday to you
Thank
for
you.
at the time of this recording, for if this clip makes it, she's recording this interview on her birthday, which I found out when I hopped on the call with her. So shout out to you for doing this on your birthday.
Thanks.
I want to make sure you
Thanks.
get shouted out and everything.
Thanks.
And so
I'm
I did.
21. I'm just kidding.
Happy 21st. Happy 21st. I'm 25. You're younger than me. You're younger than me with all this experience.
21, 11 times over, 12 times over. So
Well, happy birthday regardless. And
thank you.
oh yeah, and I did see, so I did do some light research. I don't do heavy research on people I interview because I want to
Sure.
talk to them and hear their
Of
stories. But
course.
I did hear you run a production company. What would
I
you
did.
like
Yeah. It's a production company called Reflection Productions. It's not as extravagant as it sounds. It doesn't sound cool at all, actually, when I'm going to break it down to you like this. Whenever you're a contract employee, especially if you're here in Texas, you get double taxed as a sole proprietor. So it was impressed upon me very early on when I was doing commercial work that I should open up an LLC. And because of the work that I do, which is film related, they're, oh, we'll open up a production company. So I did open up a production company. It wasn't as glamorous as like, yeah, I do my own projects and they're big budget projects. It's nothing like that. I've done smaller stuff, and not to, discredit that work either, but it's been primarily like small little like branding deals and stuff like that. So it was mostly just for tax purposes, and I'd hate to be the rain on that parade, but if somebody who's going to be watching this, and I don't know if they will, if you're going to be a freelancer, you need to have an LLC, especially for making more than 15K a year doing what you do, because otherwise Uncle Sam's going to tax you twice as much as a sole proprietor. So if you have an LLC, at least you're protected. So hopefully, I know it doesn't sound that glamorous. I haven't done any big projects. I would love to, but we're just not there yet. I feel like I have a lot to learn still before I'm having people entrust me with millions of dollars to create their content.
So you say you still have that company or you don't anymore?
I do.
You do? Okay.
Whenever I do freelancing work, I mean, technically I'm a freelancer now because I'm not full-time employed by anybody until I'm on that project. Then it's like, okay, I'm full-time employed for 3 months or 6 months, but the next job I'm working for a different employer. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're doing contracting work, you're a 1099 employee. you're basically what that means is that an employer, you don't have an employer because they're not paying for healthcare and they're not paying for any fringes or anything like that. Whereas if you were a W-2 employee, then somebody's paying for your healthcare, somebody's paying for the fringes. So it's kind of the separation there.
Mhm. And I'm getting curious now because something just popped in my head. So, because of the different things that you've done in the industry, different creative outlets, what inspires your creativity?
Oh, everything inspires me. I
Everything?
mean, oh my gosh. Well, I mean, like just talking with you, right? Like you were just telling me that you made a short film about grief. Like, I think that's beautiful. And I think like-minded people who, especially creatives, I mean, I just feed off of other people's energy. If I'm around people who are creative, that inspires me to be creative. If I'm stagnant, then I just like kind of sit in that in a way until I'm like out of the environment. But
Hello? Uh, Hello?
hold on. Oh, okay.
Okay,
Sorry. Can you hear me?
yeah. Yes, yes.
Sorry. I don't know what I did. I don't know. Everything inspires me. I'm like constantly entranced by the world. And I think there's beauty in everything. And I feel like when I've been the most creative is when I've been like, I don't know, sad. I feel like that's a really good way to get that out of my system. And I don't know, it's just like a really cerebral and melancholic process, but in the same way, it's like freeing. And I haven't felt sad in a long time. Thankfully, things have been pretty good for me in all the aspects of my life. But in a way, like you still get to be creative no matter what you do,
Yeah.
right? Like in your everyday life, you can just be inventive. Like I'm a mother now, and I'm having to
Mhm.
figure out like I have to be creative all the time. It's funny. I was just talking to my sister. She was visiting, and I put puppy pads underneath my baby when I change her because I'm afraid of an accident. And she was making fun of me for that. And I'm like, well, I don't want to wash sheets every 10 seconds. And then it happened to her. She peed. And then she was like, oh, that's actually like really smart. And it's like, well, I don't know. You just got to be creative in
Yeah.
everything that you do. Obviously, that's not a glorious example, but um, as far as like my own projects, I don't know. I'm just always, I like sad. I don't know. There's just something really visceral about it. It's a human experience that we all share.
Mhm.
And to process grief, it's like different for literally everybody. And so, yeah,
Mm. And thank you for saying all that in a great way because when you said everything inspires you, a light bulb went off because that's how I feel too, honestly.
yeah,
Because I think the thing for me, especially with the type of things I'm trying to do, especially like I said, I'm working on a short film right now, experimental one about grief, and it's one of those things I always kind of just any interaction with anybody can inspire me because it's kind of like they say art. It's like it's almost like the old saying, "Art imitates life," and it's really
right.
it's almost really like that because what I found to be probably easier in some ways to do as a, at least for me specifically, if I just look at my life for examples, things that I either experience or stories I hear other people go through, that in and of itself can just be enough inspiration to just do something. Like,
Definitely.
yeah, cause like, for example, like if I'm talking to maybe someone I haven't chatted with in a long time, that can inspire me to do some work, for example. Like even like in this way, is this interview, for example, like inspiring to reach out because I liked watching Fallout. I like seeing the
Right.
work, or it's like, I'm just in a very great mood. I want to reach out, want to connect to people. So it's kind of like that
Sure.
inspiration, like in this example, kind of led me to you in a sense. So
Right.
I'm always looking at that to see, and that's also why I love chatting with people too, is to see
Sure.
what inspires them. Because I like to get into the core of the art, really, of it too.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, like for example, everyone knows of a director, they know actors, But there's
Right.
so many other moving parts in the industry too that I think are
Yes.
definitely as exciting because it's really the people that you don't hear talk about much that really
Sure.
like really like provide the backbone for these type of projects. And so
Right.
for you moving forward, what type of work related goals do you have for navigating industry? Like where do you want to see yourself in the future in this business?
I mean, I feel like that's a constantly moving target for me. I always think I have an idea of what I want to do and where I want to be and how I want to be. If you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I still would have said I want to be a producer. And that answer evolved into maybe I want to show run because that's actually more of my speed. But I think right now where I'm at is I feel like still have so much to learn in my own craft. Being a grip, being a shooting grip, being a rigging grip, being a best boy grip, being a best boy rigging grip, being a key shooting grip, being a key rigging grip. There's so much still that I feel like I need to soak up. And I think my answer right now is I think I just want to focus on being a good grip and doing my job. I haven't mentioned this in the interview, but I really haven't been a grip that long, truth be told. And I tell this to people all the time, I don't feel like I've earned my salt, truthfully. And what I mean by that is I've jumped in a whole bunch of different departments very early. I was in art department, special effects. I mentioned that earlier. And I eventually got picked up in the grip department. And very early on, Key Grips noticed that I'm very good with administrative skills and I'm very good at that type of work. And so it instantly propelled me into being a best boy grip faster than what a traditional, like, it's very hands-on work and you're learning how to do each role. It's like I said to you before, it's hierarchical. And I don't feel like I learned enough as boots on the ground before I got moved up to second in command. But the work's different and I excel better at the administrative stuff and the managerial stuff than I do being a grip. And so to say all of that, I feel like I need to spend more time being boots on the ground. So when I am in that managerial position, which I am often, I can confidently be like, this is how it's going to be done. This is how we do it. Da 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 da. And I don't feel like imposter syndrome because that's how I feel a lot of the time. And I obviously have seen my credits. I've done a lot of work, but I say this still that I feel like I haven't done enough learning the fundamentals of my department. And so I just want to be a good grip. I think that's my answer. For now, I just want to learn my craft and then see where that takes me. If it leads me to be a key shooting grip eventually or key rigging grip eventually, that would be the next step up for me. Then I'd be interested in it because, like you mentioned, it's like there's creativity in everything. Like my job, I'm constantly having to be creative. How do I get this trailer that's supposed to be at 5 different locations and I have to service 5 different locations from the same thing? And I'm having to figure out, I have to be creative in how I do that. I have to be creative in who I hire. I have to think of the culture of the people that are working in my department. Do they work well together? Do they work well with the shooting crew? Do they work well with my boss? Do they work well with me? Do they work well with each other? And so I have to be creative in how I'm building my team. And as far as the rigs, well, obviously there's creativity in that.
Mm,
No one person's going to rig this light the same way.
mm,
Everybody's going to have a different idea to do it. The key is who does it safely and who does it the most efficiently, with safety being the number one thing. And well, maybe this light needs to go somewhere else and I have to rig it some other way. I have to be creative in how I do that. So I think about it like Lego blocks. And these Lego blocks can go in all sorts of variations and they can all do different things and they can achieve the same job. We just do it differently. And so I don't know. I guess that's my answer. Long story
mm,
short, just be
mm,
better at my craft.
mm. I think we might be related because we keep saying like we're on the same wavelength of like we all, so we might really be related in some way, honestly, because it seems like when you say like there's always like kind of like that next thing you want to accomplish, and it's kind of the thing for me just with any general goal. I think like I would have said before, probably like in high school or like middle school, like there's like this ultimate like career goal I want to achieve, but as an adult now, for me, it's like onto the I just want like the next challenge, like the next thing really. It's like whatever the
Yeah,
next thing is like, because I feel like for me personally, if I have like an ultimate goal, if I achieve it, then that kind of creates a feeling of like potential laziness for me. Because I just know how I am. I have
right,
to, because I tell people this, I constantly feel the need to just kind of like be doing something. But it's also
sure,
partially because I know if I'm just being too idle, that can like laziness can set in. So
right,
it's kind of like to
right.
combat that too. And I'm curious, have you had a chance to watch Fallout yet?
I did. I did. I finally had a chance right before baby was born. So it was great. It was great. I loved it.
It was a great series, and because I knew people that watched it, and it showed up like I think I saw an article how popular it was on Amazon Prime, and of course I haven't played the games, but of course I know of the games because I'm a gamer. So I'm like, I'll check out this show because an example I think of a great video game adaptation, in my opinion, is The Last of Us that came out last year on HBO.
Yeah, it was great.
So for me, I'm like, and I trust Amazon Prime to deliver those great shows. I mean, The Boys is an example of a great
Right,
show.
right.
So I trust Amazon Prime to deliver. No pun intended. I trust Amazon Prime to deliver when it comes to. I I caught myself like that's a pun, unintentional.
You're right.
I trust them to deliver great content to. So
Definitely.
so yeah, and so just based on all the experiences you've had in a general sense, because of the fact that you've worked in different roles, what advice would you have for those wanting to work in the film industry?
I would say I'll give practical advice first. I would say if you're really trying to get into this industry, do what you're doing, which is network. Go on IMDb, find those emails, see if somebody's open to speaking with you, and asking them if they would have time to speak, following them on Instagram, obviously being respectful while you do it. You don't want to pressure somebody into speaking with you. Just say, hey, I would really love to pick your brain. Exactly how you approach me. I would say secondly, get onto Facebook, get a Facebook, find those paid cast and crew calls, work on those short films, work on those web series. If there's commercials that you can hop on, people post stuff there. They also post on staffmeetup.com. I never personally used it, but I know plenty of people who have gotten PA jobs. You would have to know right out the gate that you would probably start off as a production assistant. It is what most people would say bottom of the totem pole work. You are the grunt. You are going to get copies. You are going to pick up trash. You're going to set up tents, put up chairs, but that gives you that opens the floodgates to talking to other people in other departments. You want to work in camera? Well, as a PA, you can talk to the camera department and say, hey, how do I do what you do? That's what I want to do. And then just having good conversation with people about what you want. You have to be an advocate for yourself all the time, and you need to be respectful. Once you're in the door, and say you're a PA, or say you're, I don't know, you're an assistant camera or something, the next thing you would have to do is know that people are watching you all the time. You have to act as if there are eyeballs on you at every moment, and you need to put your best game day face on, and you need to be anticipatory. You need to be friendly because 99% of the time, people are going to hire you for your personality than they are about how good you are at that job. Because people can teach you how to do a job, they can't teach you how to be a good person or how to be a hard worker. And so I always tell people when they're first getting into this business, be the personality hire because I will hire you if you are a hard worker and you have a good attitude and maybe you don't know the equipment very much. Well, I can teach you the equipment. That's the whole idea, right? But I can't teach you how to do those things. So that would be number one piece of advice. You don't have to go to film school to work in this business. In fact, unless you're going to a really prestigious school, I would say just don't go altogether. And I'd say that if you're very serious about this business, you don't need school. You don't have to be in debt to work in this business. It's not going to serve you on set the way you think it is. And I know that's like a really harsh thing to say, but out of all my film friends and all the people that I know, maybe a handful actually went to film school. And it has not done a lot for them unless they're a creative, like a director or a producer. And that way, yes, film school will teach you more. But if you're trying to be a gaffer, or you're trying to be a cinematographer, or you're trying to be in hair and makeup, film school is not going to help you other than teaching you maybe set etiquette. And so I would just say if you're planning on trying to get in the industry and do one of those things, pick up a camera, pick up your phone, start shooting stuff, be creative with looks. You have to be your own self promoter because you're going to be a freelancer in this business. And being a freelancer means you have to be an advocate for yourself at all times. So, yeah.
And thank you for sharing that because it's what you said reminds me of something that just pops up in my head too about the things you can't teach. And I think to an extent too, I mean, of course, everyone's different in terms of personality, but you have to have a certain level of charisma in your own way just to navigate
Yeah.
just any job field, honestly. That's what I realized too, because you can have all the knowledge and skills, which is great to have that. But at the end of the day, I remember somebody telling me this. Are you going to go with the person who doesn't necessarily know everything, still has the same drive and attitude to want to do stuff, but they're more charismatic than the person who is not as charismatic, but they might know more? You're gonna go with the
Right.
person because at the end of the day, we want to work with people that we like and what we
Of course.
that are fun to be around. That's what it's
Right.
really gonna come down to. And I think the biggest thing is to, and not even just for film, working in film itself, just really any type of interpersonal job field is really, it's what I call accepting human nature. That's what
Sure.
it really accepting
Sure.
human nature. So, and that took me a while to kind of really want to accept that, especially like growing up as a kid, you think things are like this is a certain way, people are supposed to like this all the time. But then, like I said, like I'm 25, so like the reality of adulthood hits eventually.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
at the age where like it has definitely hit. So it's like gotta learn how to deal with people as they are. And
Sure.
so that's something that I definitely took a root of. And is there anything upcoming that you have that you would like to talk about? Any upcoming projects, work at all?
Yeah, the next project that I believe I'm slated for is I actually leave for New York on the 31st of this month, so I have to leave by Friday to get up to New York by the 3rd. Is a television show called Sirens. That's up and coming. It's supposed to be on Netflix. And then I think beyond that, maybe a Happy Madison project. I'm not really sure. Um, as far as like how I get work now, it's not how most people would get jobs. I guess Christopher Granito, the guy that was attached to Fallout, once he plucked me from Texas and he said, "You're coming with me to New York." I basically am now part of that camp. So whenever Christopher has work and he wants me to be a part of that project, then he'll reach out to me and he say, "Hey, come on this job." So that's basically how I get work now. Is once Christopher has a job or my other bosses have a job and they say, "Hey, Amanda, do you want to do this project?" And I'll be like, "Sure." And that's how I get work.
And in the process, you're kind of becoming a Texan New Yorker in the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
process too.
I have a spot in Brooklyn now, so that's fun.
And I actually visited New York City back in November, and I walked through Brooklyn, and
Oh,
I
yay.
I like walking through Brooklyn. I can't lie, I can't wait to for whenever I go back to New York City.
Yeah,
And so, because I know that's definitely, of course, one of the big spots for film. And just
definitely.
honestly, just spending 10 minutes in Times Square, you're like, actually, it's going back a little bit to what you said about everything inspires you. just being in New York City inspired so much for me, just on
Sure.
a personal level, and also just also work goals too, because I was like, wow, this is a city with so many people, it's just a melting pot of different cultures. You're like, I'm in Brooklyn or Queens going to a bodega.
Right.
Then the
Right.
next day I'm like at the Rockefeller Plaza. So just seeing different types of life is what I always find to be interesting. And I think just finding that finding that outlook on life, because I think with artists and what you were talking about, how kind of like how pain can be inspirational. I kind of find that's the same for me, because
Sure.
I've realized this too. My greatest source of creativity comes from some place of pain, which is
Sure.
kind of like, it's kind of a interesting contrast, because we all want to live a happy life, but then
Of course.
the greatest source of inspiration comes from a place of pain. But what I realized for myself is kind of taking those lessons of pain and kind of growing from it, because in some ways I learn more about myself when I'm tapping into a creative like place of pain, because the way I
Sure.
see it, like any sort of creativity I want to do, I want to make sure I get some personal growth and benefit too, because like I intertwine my work so much with my life, so that's why I always have that mentality.
Sure. No, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's like, how can you really appreciate beauty without pain and without
Exactly.
sadness and without anger? I mean, you just can't. And so I definitely relate to that.
Mhm. And to end this, at least this recorded part, so we gotta settle the debate. We gotta settle the debate. So I'm curious, because as someone who wants to visit California, I've heard LA is the best, San Fran's the best, San Diego's the best. Do you have any input on that at all, as far as the best city in California? Because of the Texas debate we've settled.
I would say I like LA the best. I mean,
Okay.
I've been to all three. I lived in LA for, just shy of a decade. And what I really dig about it is that such good food everywhere. You have all sorts of environments around you. You have the desert, you have the mountains, you have the beach, you have the city. And then, you mentioned like New York. I mean, you just have a hodgepodge of different communities. And I don't know, it's just all really beautiful. I really enjoyed the time there. I just wish it was cheaper.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That is the thing.
Yeah. And the weather's great, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I dig it. And I dig New York too. I like wherever I go. I mean, everything brings out a special piece of like who you are and how you interact with your environment. I think being in a city like New York, it's so fast paced and there's so much culture to Brooklyn and to Manhattan. And I don't know, I just like suck it up because it's just so freaking cool. And in the same way that LA is like laid back and here's like this culture that's over here, the West Coast life, like really cool, and then
Yeah.
Texas, we got our yeehaws and our breakfast tacos and our cowboying it up. Love that shit too, you know?
That's it.
So I don't know. I mean, every place has something beautiful to offer. And for me, everything, like it's like I said earlier, like everything inspires me. I feel like there's beauty in just about anything if you pay enough attention to it or you really dissect it. And I find myself doing that a lot. Like I'm really introspective person. I'm somebody who's constantly in my own head and in good and bad ways. I'm just like constantly appreciating what's around me because I feel like if you're grateful for things, then life is that much more beautiful. And so I don't know. I feel like there's a phrase for it that I can't think of, but it's just like, nobody really wants to be around negative Nancy's and bad things happen to people who like just want to see the bad. And I feel like the opposite's true. Kind of like the law of attraction sort of thing. It's like connects with like. So if you're good to people and good to yourself and good to nature and good to things and hopefully good things happen to you. It's not burdening the universe with the expectation of like I'm a good person, so good things should happen to me. It's a hope,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah. If you're looking at everything bad, like oh fuck, I stubbed my toe today. Guess today's gonna suck, and then you're just gonna find everything wrong with the day. So
Yeah.
I feel like the opposite works too.
Yeah. I love how this kind of turned into like a life podcast right now. How we kind of turned it into.
Yeah,
Who knows? We might have a podcast coming soon. Who knows?
yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. I just feel like if for you, Jonathan, if your intention is to like share this with other people who like are interested in being in this business, like yeah, I mean you can be creative and you can be all of that, but like for me, I always want to tell people the practical because like the reality of like what this industry is going to look like. You're not going to like you're going to work anywhere from 10 to 16-hour days on your feet all day. And if you're in the grip department, you're lifting heavy gear and you're pushing heavy gear and you're sweating and you're outside, or sometimes you're inside. Sometimes it's boring because you're on a green screen all day and you're not doing that much. Um, I don't want to. I feel like so often when I watch interviews of like celebrities who say like, "Oh, how did you get your success?" They never really give practical advice on like how to get the job and how to be successful. And it's like for me, if somebody asks me those questions, I'm going to tell you the practical steps of like what I see people do, what garners them success, and then tell you how to maintain that, which is have a good attitude, be professional, be anticipatory, know that you're being watched all the time, and like what's the word I'm looking for? Like optics are so important. How you're perceived is so important. And people undervalue soft skills all the time. And that's what's has served me best. People don't hire me because I'm the best of the best. People hire me because I have a good attitude and I work hard. And I try to do right by my bosses and the crew around me. And so in and that of itself garners respect. And I would hope that anybody who enters this business wants to elevate it. And so I want to tell you how to elevate it and how to elevate yourself. You have to be your own promoter. You have to be an advocate for yourself. And here are the things that you can do in order to be successful. Talk to those people in the department that you want to work and say, hey, I'm interested in doing what you do. How do I do it? How did you do it? How did your friend do it? I want to be a director. Get on your phone. Start directing some stuff. You don't have to do anything fancy. It's just to teach you how to be a director. If you direct, you're going to have it edited. How is it going to be edited? If you don't have the practical experience of doing it on your own, then how do you expect to be successful? How do you expect to be backed by millions of dollars eventually? Somebody's investing in you. And if you're not investing in yourself, why in the hell am I going to invest in you? So it's just that sort of thing, you know?
And I want to say, above all else, for this interview, I appreciate you for keeping it real because
Yeah.
that's what I always want to. Because I always appreciate when people just tell it how it is. Like, and I like that you mentioned that too, like the practical, because people need to hear that too. Because I think the issue I see with people is like they can watch stuff and get a certain perception, but at the end of the day, that's why it's kind of like what I told you. I think maybe even before we started recording, or maybe even on this recording, that the reason why I want to interview different positions in the industry is to highlight what it's actually like I'll be
Right.
like the entire totality of it, because I
Right.
know some people have asked me before, like for example, like producing would probably be, if anything, I guess like the main thing I want to do if I had to pick one, but at the same time,
Yeah.
even though, for example, I don't plan on being a rigging grip, I'm still going to take the time to talk to someone in that job role so I can have
Sure.
the knowledge and education,
Of
because
course.
you never know, there might be a situation where I have to work directly with Ring Grip and know how to work with them. But if I just don't know anything about their job, it's much more difficult to be like, I'll just leave you to it.
That's
You can't be
exactly it.
you can't be a much help someone if you don't know what they're doing. So it's more of an educational thing for me and
Sure.
just always learning. So I always take that in consideration. I definitely thank you for
Sure.
everything that you shared so far today.
Of course. Of course. I'm happy to. Yeah. I mean, accountability on set's number one. I mean, people are going to expect you to do your job. And if you don't do it and you don't perform, then nobody can justify you being there the next day. Right. And so, in that way, the film business can be pretty cutthroat, but that's true for any job. Right. If you're not performing, then why am I going to continue paying you? And why am I going to continue employing you? And that's the reality of this business. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people glamorize this business and want to be a part of it. And if you're going to come on to a set and not perform, well, then I'm going to find the next person who's interested in doing this job, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to do it, right? And so, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to I'm glad to. I don't know. I'm just being honest about what this business looks like. You know?